This is a big reason why I was an advocate for natural language processing 10 years ago. So 10 years ago in 2016, I started a company called Freight AI. And the biggest reason was that, for me, is that humans communicate using natural language. Drivers don't care if they get you, the broker, on the phone at 3 a.m. They care that they get the problem solved quickly and efficiently within their workflow at 3 a.m., which is the promise of AI, right? Here's the thing. As a freight broker, your goal as a freight broker is to get 0 inbound phone calls. Every time you get an inbound phone call, it means it's a bad sign.
Welcome to the Freight Show podcast. Today, we're joined by Ryan Schreiber, Chief Growth Officer at Metafora, and one of the most outspoken voices in freight tech. Ryan's spent the last decade at the intersection of logistics, software, and strategy, helping brokers, carriers, and shippers modernize their operations. He breaks down what's really broken in freight, why most tech projects fail before they start, and how AI can reshape workflows when applied to the right problems, not just shiny ones. Ryan also dives into the concept of orchestration, explaining how technology, process, and people must harmonize, like an orchestra, to truly transform a logistics business. All right, let's dive in. This episode is brought to you by Vooma, the back-office automation platform for freight brokerages and 3PLs. From AI-powered document handling to streamlined workflows, Vooma helps logistics teams scale smarter. Learn more at vooma.com.
Okay, welcome everyone to the Freight Show. We have my good friend and how would you describe your role? Because obviously you're a Chief Growth Officer at Metafora, but I feel like you're like an industry pundit as well, maybe, or...
Man, our old head of marketing, who's one of my wife's best friends, her name's Teresa Ronquillo. She's great. She one time referred to me as Freightastotle.
Freightastotle. Okay, I like that.
So like that's on my LinkedIn headline is
Nice.
Freightastotle. One of our customers one time called me Freight Jesus, although I feel like both of those are names you can't call yourself an influencer. If you refer to yourself as an influencer, you're a douchebag. Other people can refer to you as an influencer.
But you can refer to yourself as Freight Jesus, though.
Well, no, I don't think you can. That is my point. So those are things you can't call yourself, but other people have called me those things. I think that I would describe myself as somebody who is in the middle of, for the last 10 years, I've really been in the middle of like freight tech. I've started freight tech companies. I advise for freight tech companies. I'm a consultant now for, brokers, carriers, shippers, private equity firms, freight tech companies directly. So I'm sort of in the middle of this, and I consider myself a bit of an advocate for the future. One of the things we were talking on before you turned this on was this idea that like progress will happen and like things will change. Like stagnation is never, you're always moving. You're either moving forward or you're moving backwards, but you're always moving. And so like I sort of I consider myself a bit of an advocate of the future. All of those are a bit unspecific. And to your point, it's really hard. I mean, it's hard to be specific about what I do because I'm just a person who knows people and connects. I like to think of myself as a connector. I connect ideas. I connect people. I connect people to ideas. I connect ideas to each other. I connect people to people. And that's a bit of like where I sit and what I do, to kind of like just help make the industry less broken. It's really broken and it breaks people. When we were raising money for my last company, that was one of my talkie tracks about why we did this. I was like, it's broken and it breaks people. It breaks dispatchers and drivers and brokers and shipping managers. And it's just so fundamentally broken. These freight memes make me sad about broker guy.
What do you think is broken about it?
So I think what's broken about it is that it's not so much about that it is opaque. That is certainly part of it. Like a lot of human stress comes from uncertainty, right? Like when you know what's going to happen, no matter how bad it is, in general, you have a way to deal with it. Like there's this thing about cancer patients or like people who have terminal diseases where like if they have a miraculous recovery, it can actually be really difficult for them to reintegrate into, and I have no idea if this is true, fact check me on it, but like this is something that I've heard. It can be really difficult for them to reintegrate into life because they had certainty around the outcome and they had come to terms with it. They were going to die. Like their life was going to be over was the last thing. So uncertainty is something that is really difficult. And I think that's a huge, there are so many variables that go into the successful movement of goods, the successful storage of goods, the success, things that are in supply chain, right? Like sourcing materials, so where you source materials, where you manufacture, how you get things, what your trade lanes are, how you de-risk those things, what's going to happen. Those are all things that are just like that are really difficult, and they're like factorial problems, right? They are multiples of multiples problems. But I think that at the end of the day, like one of the reasons it's broken is that there's so much blocking and tackling that is tied up in this concept of service and relationship that doesn't need to be or have to be. This is a big reason why I was an advocate for natural language processing 10 years ago. So 10 years ago in 2016, I started a company called Freight AI. And we started around when Convoy and Uber started, and their thesis was an app, and our thesis was chat and other applications of natural language processing, right? And the biggest reason was that for me is that humans communicate using natural language, right? Like that is our most natural, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm just going to use natural again, even though I hate
Comfortable.
myself.
I know what you mean. Like feels intuitive or something.
Intuitive, like it's primal, our most primal user interface. Because language is a user interface, right? Like so are like body signals or what have you, right? Like whatever that thing is called, that my cats communicate with each other with. Do you know something about cats? They only meow at people. Like as an example of how language is a user interface. Cats communicate each other with body language. They'll hiss at each other and growl at each other, but they only meow at humans. Right? Like they meow at humans because that's an interface that they have with humans that gets them what they want. Right? Like language is an abstraction. Communication language is an abstraction, right?
It's an API to your brain.
Exactly. And it's our most natural user interface. And that just was a concept that I thought about how all of this was siloed information, right? So like my TMS is over here and my phone's over here. So like if it's 3 a.m. and a driver needs a delivery number, the only way for him to get that is to reach out to somebody. And he could go into an app, but an app requires process learning in a way that natural language doesn't. Right. And I was talking to one of our engineers about this recently, a guy named Chris Taylor on our team. And like, how you navigate a UI has become implicit. And so we don't think about what it takes to actually do it. But your brain takes processing power to think about, I want to send a Slack message to Jesse. So I need to navigate. I need to click on Slack. I need to search. I need to I hit Command Space. I type in Slack. And then Slack comes up, I hit Command N and I type in Jesse. And then I don't look for those things on the screen. But it's implicit. So it doesn't seem like it takes processing power, but it does. Right. So anyway, for me, one of the things that's broken is that this concept of the blocking and tackling is tied up in relationship. Like if a driver's at a delivery location at 3:00 in the morning and he needs a delivery number, the way we have to interact with that, if there are situations where it's not a problem. He just doesn't know what it is. And there's situations where it's a massive problem. He knows what it is. They've told him that the delivery number doesn't exist. They don't have delivery numbers that are anything like that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I still got to interact with that problem exactly the same way, even though the first 20 steps of solving that problem are exactly the same. Like, and to get to that it's not a problem is the same 21st steps as it is to it is a problem. Hey, buddy, can you just tell me what delivery number you have? Yeah, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I show 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Can you try that? And I have to interact with that. And so that adds pressure to execution that is unnecessary. And so that constant pressure, you have like the ability to manage the workflow is impossible. You can't triage the level of work that you have and that pressure on the system. We used to quote C.H. Robinson's 10K when we were fundraising for Freight AI, and it would talk about, they would say that their number one risk is scaling humans to meet demand seasonally, right? And so, it's a massive challenge because it adds that pressure to the system. And you could have 27 things to do right now, or you could have 2. And then the economics of these businesses are such that you kind of can't afford to staff for everybody, for when there is 27 things for one person to do. So you have to staff for assuming everyone's going to have 2 and make them figure out how to do the 27. And so I think it's all tied up in in that concept.
I think, there's a really interesting point there that I see all the time is that it's like the demand from the system of human labor to deal with issues is not uniform, but you have to staff it in a uniform way. And so the way that you do that is that you're almost like necessarily either like bubbling out of your mind in stress because there's too much to do, or you're like kind of underutilized. You know what I mean? Which is kind of interesting.
That's right. Yeah. I think about it a lot like the problem of cloud computing, right? Like we're like kind of legacy here, as it exists in like a pre-AI. And this is, by the way, this ties into how I think about orchestration, which we can talk about.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'd love, maybe you can, because you've sort of floated with that concept, I think, online. And I obviously have my own sort of views on what I think that means, but I'd love to, like, what does that mean to you? And what do you think it means for logistics?
I think of orchestration, like there's a reason that it's called orchestration, right? And like, I love language. When I was in law school, like my favorite thing, and like in the practice of my, business, my favorite thing is actually working on contracts, because I just like love how words work. I talked about how language is an abstraction. Like words have like they're not intrinsic, obviously, but they're imparted, and they become sort of like, again, it becomes implicit, this like meaning and why things are called what they're called. And so etymology can be really fun in that way, right? Like there's a reason it's called orchestration. Think about what an orchestra does. It brings together a bunch of resources, and then, the maestro, right? The maestro orchestrates the orchestra, right? And sometimes you need a little bit more trumpet, and sometimes you need a little bit more flute, right? And like, it's bringing together disparate resources and making them harmonize. There's a reason that the word harmonize means a thing. It means working right in harmony. Harmony, not just like musically, but harmony can mean right in the environment, like in phase with the way that the world works. And the user experience that you want. For me, all of this is derivative from user experience. Like I agree with a lot of the like AI shouldn't do this and AI shouldn't do that. I disagree with a lot of it too, by the way. But because it's all derivative from what's the experience that you want the end user to have, your customer, the driver, the shipping manager, the broker, the dispatcher, whatever it might be, the supply chain, the supply chain strategist at one of your customers, and so orchestration is bringing together resources and then effectively deploying those resources. And so again, I think about it a lot like cloud computing. So, cloud computing, going back to like legacy, before cloud computing, the only way to add more compute power, more servers. And so like, I mean, this is why Amazon came up with cloud computing in the first place. Amazon was like, we got this problem.
Yeah.
During peak season, we need an F ton of these servers. And then 9 months a year, we have nothing to do with these servers, and they sit there and they just cost us money. So what can we do here? There's got to be other businesses that have this same problem, right? Of like, they have this surge in demand, but they don't have it all the time. And I think like version 1 of that in logistics and transportation was probably nearshore staffing, right? Was like, in a manner, or BPO really, not so much the staff aug staffing, but BPO, right? Like, we will take this task and we will use this task as a shared service, if you will. And so you can kind of like scale up and scale down with demand. But yeah, I mean, I think that that's right. That's exactly right. I think about it a lot like cloud computing, which is we overclock, to just take some like technology kind of concepts, right? We overclock the processor, which is the person. We overclock the processor 99% of the time. And so that processor gets really hot. And then becomes less effective, right? The challenge is for some reason, it's a badge of honor. Like, I think it's absolutely absurd that we're proud of the fact that this is the way that it is. Like, I think it's absolutely insane that we are like, that the badge of honor is I'm that guy who like, and I've been that guy, by the way. Like, I mean, I'm not proud of it, but like, to me, it's actually a sign of being ineffective at managing your time, ineffective at other stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot like that's kind of what I think, Jess. I think you're breaking the point.
Yeah. No, and I think that maybe the pride in it is that I do think there's a little bit of the way that people work and the industry works today is what is required given what is sort of possible. But like, I think that
I fundamentally disagree with that.
Well, like, so,
but make your point, but I think I'm going to.
Yeah, well, maybe to take it, like, for example, drivers at a facility, they're having an issue. Somebody needs to deal with that. And I think your point.
Somebody doesn't need to deal with that. That needs to be dealt with. That's actually why I fundamentally disagree.
But this is what I mean, is like, in the current system, there is, like, there hasn't been until recently really tools that were in place to make it very easy for somebody to be able to solve those problems.
Bro, that's not true. I was doing natural language processing stuff 10 years ago.
Yeah, but
for at least 10 years, we've had that problem. And a driver could call in. Now, we didn't have voice AI in the way that we have it. That's dynamically responsive as such.
Yeah.
But or like in the way that it is to now with generative understanding and whatnot. But at the time, a driver still could have called in and been like, I have a problem with my delivery number. And we could have understood that and said, your delivery number is 12345. And he could have said, no, it's not. It's 12346. And he could say, okay, try 12345 and call me back. Now, it's not the best user experience, agreed. But like,
yeah.
I think one of the problems that we have is not so much is how we frame the problem, actually, Jess. Like, someone does actually have to deal with that problem. That person is the driver, unfortunately. And so it all anchors back to that driver's experience. What's the experience we want the driver to have? And I want the driver to have as little friction in that experience as possible. That's also what the driver wants. Like, I don't think that anybody, drivers don't care if they get you, the broker, on the phone at 3 a.m. They care that they get the problem solved quickly and efficiently within their workflow at 3 a.m., which is the promise of AI, right? And again, not having to download, some random app and then click 16 different places, like, and why, conversation again is the most natural, kind of like primitive user interface. But Jess, like, I think that part of the problem is framing up the problem, like the way that it exists today. You said something to the effect of like, it is the way that it is because of how it exists, because of like how it has to be today, or something to that effect. And
I think your view is that this technology has been available for a long time. I would argue that like not at the quality level that means that it was going
Totally
to
agree
be
with that.
successful.
Totally agree with that.
Therefore, you run into an issue and a driver has a situation that has to be solved somehow. And the way that the industry has solved that previously was like they staff up an after hours support team to be able to like answer
Totally.
that phone call. Whereas
I think
yeah.
it's less a technology problem though, Jess. Like yes, you are right that I'm part of my argument is that technology has been there. But if you go to the foundation of what I'm saying, the foundation of what I'm saying is the problems that we face in the industry right now are largely operational problems. And they stem from, and a lot of the problems that we face with technology and technology companies face, and that brokers and carriers and shippers face with getting the value out of technology aren't technology problems, they're operational problems.
Mm-hmm.
And they stem from a fundamental lack of understanding of the problem in and of itself. It's like if you go to the doctor and you go to a doctor, it's like you go to you've got a broken arm. And so instead of going to an orthopedic surgeon, you go to an allergist, technically an MD. But the guy's like, and you got a rash on top of this broken arm or whatever. And the guy's like, oh, okay, great. We got a rash. Let's take that's why your arm hurts, because you got a rash. So if we treat the rash, your arm will be better. And then it's like, okay, well, the rash is gone, but my arm's still broken and it still hurts. It's a fundamental misunderstanding what the actual problem is. I'll give you a really on the nose example as it relates to AI. I was with a top 5 broker a month or so ago, 2 months ago, and they had done a voice AI. They piloted with a bunch of different companies, and they did a voice AI pilot with one of them. And I asked how it was going. They said, not well. And I said, why not? That's surprising. And they said, well, our pilot was answering inbound carrier phone calls because we saw that we have this problem of like a bunch of our calls go unanswered. Yeah, that's a lot of brokers. And so we thought if we answered all of the calls, then, that'll solve the problem. Okay. So they said, what we saw is our conversion rate on those calls has gone down dramatically. So now we're actually just paying double because the bottleneck is no longer answering the calls. The bottleneck still are people. I still have to pay all of these people and I'm answering all of the calls. And so I'm sure I'm filtering out like some of the calls that I don't want or need, but I'm still having to pay for that solution. Here's the thing. As a freight broker, you're solving the wrong problem. Your goal as a freight broker is to get 0 inbound phone calls. And there's going to be some brokers listening to this going, what do you mean? That's absurd. No. Every time you get an inbound phone call, it means it's a bad sign. How could it possibly be a bad sign, Ryan? What if it's a shipper calling me to give me a load? Well, it means you weren't on the phone with that shipper getting the load. You weren't following up on the quote appropriately. You weren't there, right? Like you didn't know that this ship, ideally, the shipper gives out the loads at 9 a.m. You call them at 8:45 and you're like, here are all the open quotes. What am I winning? Hey, hang on a second. I didn't win this Jersey to Chicago. What happened with that one? Can I still get that? Oh, the other guy was at 8:75. If I can be at 8:50, can I get it? Great. Yeah. Okay. Every inbound phone call is actually a bad signal. So you solved the wrong problem. That's why you weren't getting value out of the initiative. It's an operational problem. You applied technology to the wrong problem. You didn't fundamentally understand the problem is that you needed to solve. So what I'm arguing, Jesse, is that the challenges that we face right now as an industry is how we have framed these problems. And that's why I'm seeing people not get value out of or getting incremental value or getting less value than they could out of their AI initiatives. That's right. Like, and I have the benefit of having thought about this and worked on this for 10 years as compared to everybody else. I mean, everybody else is 3 years into this journey or so, or many other people are 3 years into this journey or so. And there are people who are a lot smarter on technology than I am, obviously, but like they're operational problems. So how do we frame it? What's the actual problem we're trying to solve? Not the symptom of the problem, not the problem as it exists today, but like what's the underlying disease here that we need to treat? And then like, let's figure out how, then let's reimagine how we can treat that disease. And yeah, we got these symptoms we got to deal with too, right? But let's get to the heart of how to solve that problem.
Yeah.
Do you disagree?
Yeah, I'd probably need to be like a clearer, I guess it's not fully clear to me what you are then diagnosing as the underlying problem.
So the underlying problem, I'll use the phone call example again. So the underlying problem is, so the first thing that we need to do is, instead of figuring out how do we answer all of our inbound phone calls, figure out why we're getting so many inbound phone calls, right? So this broker, look, so what are your sourcing channels?
Yeah.
How are you going to market with your capacity? What is the failover? Why are these becoming inbound phone calls, right? So if you're getting inbound phone calls,
take that example, for example, sit next to a lot of carrier rep. Like, part of it is that if you're a carrier rep, I speak to a lot of them on the ground. People have structured their business in ways where posting and getting inbound is the kind of easy button, because
that's right.
It's a lot.
Totally agree.
So that's definitely part of it. And there's also scenarios where it doesn't really, if you have a very strong carrier network, and ideally your percentage that you're covering within your existing network is very high, and there's circumstances where that freight needs to be moved and you're going to put it up, and if that ends up representing, for a lot of folks, they struggle to create the time and space for their team. And so, for example, putting something in place to eliminate work that shouldn't be happening is also, I think, part of what creates the space then to be focused on the things that are more value. Because say covering loads off a load board can end up being well, shit, we're getting a bunch of inbound, but I don't actually have the capacity or process or time necessarily to cultivate the network and the process to be able to reach
That's
those.
right.
And so, it can be part of a step towards the solution.
It absolutely, that's exact, but that's the right framing.
Yes.
It's a part of a step to the solution.
Yes, I agree with that. Yeah.
And so the challenge is people look at it as the solution. I answer my inbound phone call and then I'm not getting value. The actual problem that you have, you said it earlier, the actual problem that you have in your capacity organization, by the way, whether you're buy, sell, or cradle to grave, capacity is a capability. Procurement is a capability. Yeah. If you're a freight broker. The problem that you have in procurement is creating the space in the context of the rest of the work to effectively source capacity, right? And so, when I talk about I get these
you got a thumbs up.
Yeah, I got the thumbs up
the
for
AI
myself.
liked it.
Apparently, yeah, the AI loved my point. That's a really good that's the right framing of the problem, right? So how do I create space in the so when we talk about orchestration also means that. That's the white space I think people are missing.
What do you think, Ryan? I'm curious, if you sort of think about the carrier org and procurement org of the future, what do you think it starts to look like? And if you were sort of to map out the what you think that, I'm sort of curious. I have some perspectives here, but what you sort of think, given that there is technology that is sort of okay, so it's definitely not thinking that kind of just handling the inbound calls is a strategy necessarily, but it's sort of one piece of it. What do you think that should look like? And maybe put technology outside of it, but what is best practice here? From your perspective.
So this is stuff that Metafora works on often. We have an offering called Capacity Strategy that touches on exactly what we're describing. And also, in the interest of full disclosure, I did recently invest in a company that is working on orchestration around this concept. And so I will definitely, some of what I have to say is definitely influenced by those experiences that I have and that I've spent time working on. So you have to cohort. You have to kind of understand the metric. You got to be a student of the game here for a second, right, Jess? So, as people think of buy, sell, and cradle to grave as sort of like these like discrete things from each other, but they're really more like a spectrum. And so the way that most capacity organizations operate today is actually more what I would derisively call cradle to grave 2.0. And not derisive towards cradle to grave, because I actually think cradle to grave with the right technology can be an incredibly effective model. And is an incredibly effective model even without the right technology. But I'm a Chicago brokerage guy, and I think, so I come in from that, I come from that lens. But you got to kind of understand that today there are really three discrete sourcing events that happen. And they look a little bit like, they should look a little bit like a funnel. And I've got slides for this that, like, if this was like a lunch and learn, I'd flick up. But the first is what we would call strategic sourcing, which is like long-term procurement, right? That's things for like that's your long-term stable capacity. That's where you're looking for private fleets, or you're looking for traditional backhaul carriers. You're looking for carriers that have regular capacity, or are looking for help with their backhauls, that book their trucks 72, 48 hours out because they have frequency and regularity. And those are harder to find. They're harder to sell. And it looks a lot more like enterprise shipper sales. It's a longer sales cycle. It's more relationship driven. It's less transaction driven. And the way you staff that has to look a lot different. And the way you go to market with those carriers has to look a lot different. And you need the freight to feed those carriers effectively. Like, if you don't have the freight, you can't. Sometimes I see these companies like, and Metafora primarily works with like large enterprises, right? $200 million plus companies. And really most of our customers are in that like $750 million plus range. And so even those companies, like, I see them and they don't have the freight to support the capacity strategy they want to try and execute. So let's go get these like traditional backhaul carriers, and they got a lot of short lead time freight. Like, those trucks are gone, and that it doesn't solve their problem, right? Backhaul carriers want to get their drivers home. They want or get their drivers back, whatever. They want to get predictable freight, because irregular route brokered freight drives up driver churn, which one metric you can tell me that can tell me how a fleet's performing is what driver turnover is like. So you got to look at strategic sourcing as one part of that funnel. And your goal should be to cover as much of that as possible, as much of your freight in that part of the funnel as possible. And then everything fails over to this middle tier, which is kind of your like your relationship carrier tier that most everyone can build towards. And that's what we would call advanced booking, right? So that is, that's like 48 hours out or so. And it's carriers that have, they have some of them have regular routes. Some of them are kind of irregular route, but they can represent a material number of your coverage. And then everything at the bottom is really just coverage. We call it coverage. That's a knife fight. That's like, I got to get this load off the board. I can't roll it. I can't move it to tomorrow, whatever. I got to get it. I got to get it moved. How you staff that, how you go to market with those carriers, how you do those things, engage each one of those cohorts is different. So I call it cradle to grave 2.0, because right now we're asking one rep typically to do all three of those, or at least we're asking one rep to do two of those. We might ask them to do coverage and strategic sourcing. We might break out strategic sourcing and ask them to do coverage and advanced booking. But it fundamentally misunderstands the buying habits and behaviors of the service providers with whom you want to engage. And so,
why do you think? So, is your view that you think that the organization should staff each of those activities? Because, for example, I know some brokers who run more of a, you're calling it sort of like an evolved cradle to grave version, where the account manager is also responsible for carrier procurement as well. A lot of what their process actually is sort of is a process of getting the freight on one side with some regularity, right? And then early on, it's probably your coverage capacity, but over time, through that process of covering that freight, you start to sort of unearth the carriers for whom that like it's a good fit. Maybe you then even evolve into, and so it's sort of this like process of like, if you're kind of starting out at the beginning, you're probably not, you know what I mean? It's like you evolve into it, and that's kind of what success starts to look like, where you're running like sort of two sides.
You got to have the right, yes, Jess, it can look like that, but you've got to have the right measurements in place to identify. This is esoteric. Don't get me wrong. I recognize that. You want the carriers who want your freight, not the carriers who will take your freight. And you have to have the right measures in place to understand, do you have that? Now, there's going to be a lot of brokers listening to this podcast who will say, oh yeah, I have, all my carriers want the freight that I have. I've been in a lot of these businesses, and I will tell you, and I've done the analysis myself, and our team has done the analysis. Very, very rarely, even at the biggest shops, very rarely does a material number of the carriers want their freight versus will take their freight. It looks very different.
How do you measure
carrier utilization?
That is it.
Yeah, so it's all about
utilization.
No, that's certainly one measure.
Yeah,
no one metric tells any story, right? Like carrier utilization can be a great number, but we did a project last year with a large warehousing company and their brokerage. They had one of the best carrier reutilizations I've ever seen. 98% of their freight was hauled by their top 6 carriers. They were one of the worst performing brokerages I've ever been in. Like, I only say one of because I struggle to talk in absolutes, but like gun to my head, they were the far and away the worst I've ever seen. Because they were like way overpaying the market. The service wasn't good. And it was wild. I mean, they were paying something like $900 to go from Phoenix to LA, and anybody who's ever brokered freight on that lane would be like, holy crap. And they were giving it to this California carrier that is very well known for, being a Los Angeles carrier. Let's just say that. And I just looked at it immediately. I was like, oh, this is a thing. It just jumped out. I hadn't brokered freight at that point in 6.5 years. And I'm like, holy shit. I mean, and I was never a carrier rep. So there's a lot of things that go into that, Jess, but it goes down to network fit. What are the problems this carrier is trying to solve? What are the services they offer? And, so number one, if they move a regular route over the road freight, they are never going to be a carrier that wants your freight. They will always be a carrier that will take your freight. They may appreciate the business, but that doesn't solve a network problem for them, right? It helps them make money, but it doesn't solve a network problem for them. So if the carrier that you're working with ever tells you things like, where do you want to go? Where do you have regular help, or you're looking for help with your backhauls? I always have trucks in Miami. Where are you trying to get them? I just want to get them out of Miami. Well, of course you do. But if they keep telling you that and they'll tell you that right away, when you first meet them, because again, it's all about kind of building the relationship, right? But after you've been working for them for 6 months or a year or 2 years, and their answer remains, I still just want to get them out of Miami. And the reality is they really do just want to get them out of Miami. They don't have a network need. Hey, I just want to get them out of Miami, but ideally I get them to Knoxville, Tennessee, or Atlanta, Georgia, or Richmond, Virginia. But I will just get them out. That's the rub. So you've got to understand how the network fit is with the carrier.
Yeah, I mean,
and measure
this is
that.
I think an important point for understanding how do you assemble a carrier network that will allow you to consistently buy below averages with some amount of durability to it, because those will be the ones that if something's a good fit, then it's going to make sense for them. It probably means it's solving a problem that if you can do it for them consistently, right, you're going to get better prices, more consistency in the service. And
you're looking for a fit that is stronger than the rate per mile that you pay. The funny thing about freight brokerage is if you do it right, the best service and the highest quality actually also equate to the lowest rate.
Yeah.
And where people really mess it up is they try and jam the lowest rate
Yeah.
on the carriers that will take the freight, not that want the freight, right? So you're trying to find a match that's more powerful than the rate per mile. You're solving some problem in their network
Yeah.
that is different, that is discrete from the incremental 5 cents a mile or 10 cents a mile. But like you made a really good point a minute ago, which was, and this is about carrier sales, but this also goes to the broader initiatives that we're talking about. You have to do all of this in the context of solving today problems. Like you have to build a business. You have to build liquidity. The thing that's hard about building a brokerage is you have to continue to one of the things that's hard about building a brokerage is you have to continue to rebuild liquidity over time to like compete in different markets, to compete for different customers, to service the customers you have effectively, to control your cost per load and whatnot. And so you have this tension between strategic initiatives and like on the ground realities of your business. And again, that's one of the ways we talk about orchestration. Like orchestration is really important in those micro decisionings. Like one of the reasons that this is hard to execute against is in the context of what's on the board today and tomorrow. What quotes I have open right now versus in the future that I have to follow up on. Creating the time and the space, as you said it earlier, to invest in some of these initiatives. And then presenting the user and the people in the business with the information that makes it easy enough for them to actually understand where they should make that investment and how they should make that investment. And when's the time to do that? Like, you know what? Right now, just post that load to the load board because like we've got way too much freight to cover and these are going to get covered on the external boards. And it sucks and we don't love it, but like it's going to be fine because like we got these loads over here that need a lot of human attention, just using coverage examples again. But the same is true of all kinds of things. The same is true of like, do I take this delivery appointment or not? In the context of all the other work I got to do, take it. Let's figure it out. We'll get a carrier that's going to take it. In the context of, do I accept this load tender or not? No, don't take it. I know that we make I know we typically make money on these loads, but we've already got 10 uncovered for other customers on this lane, so like, we're not going to get this covered at $9.50 like we normally do. We're just not in the context of all the other stuff that we got going on. And so those are all things that to onboard that level of context for the user, for the human is really difficult, really difficult. And so you've got to do all of that in the context of these decisions at a micro level as much as at a macro level. And we lose sight of that. I think that's kind of the thing I was getting at earlier is we lose. It's an operational problem, not a technology problem. We don't spend enough time thinking about the other stuff. We think about just how to survive today.
Yeah. Ryan, we're coming up on time here. One final thing, which is your famous LinkedIn, I don't know what you call it, like moniker is,
catchphrase,
I don't know
yeah.
who needs to hear this. What is the thing that like people need to hear right now?
Oh man. Well, I probably already would have posted it on LinkedIn if it was already just one thing.
Yeah.
I don't know who needs to hear this, but AI is both harder and easier than you're making it.
Okay. I like it. Let's keep it kind of vague, and I don't want to even know what that means. I just want to let the audience kind of sit with that.
That's why I loved it. That's why I posted that way. Yeah. It's like, it's supposed to be a little hot takey, so it's also to poke fun at myself because I think that it's really funny when people post, I don't know who needs to hear this, because it's always, I noticed this when I started the reason I started doing it was I noticed people would post this, and then what would follow is the most self-serving statement of all time.
Yeah.
I don't know who needs to hear this, but like, they're running like a car wash company,
Right.
I don't know who needs to hear this.
That's
like,
filthy.
The most important thing you can do is wash your car. Like,
right. Yeah.
So that's why I started doing it, to poke fun at myself a little bit too. So,
Ryan, we could go for a lot longer, and we probably will again at some stage. But it was thanks so much for coming on the show. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks for asking me, bro. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Until next time.
Always fun.